Hello and welcome back to part 6 of the online exam system tutorial using C#.NET MVC technologies. It's a great going, isn't it? And I like it. And my name is Nelvin Amos. Thanks for watching again. In the last video, if you follow, we talked about how we can create the page foundation, basically the pagination, creating the models for the page so that we can transfer them over from the user to the server. We discussed about all of those. So in this video, we'll continue from where we left off. We'll start by submitting the form that we created. Thereon, move on towards trying to save the data. Right, we'll save the data in the database, and we'll try to cover up till that video, and that probably is going to be the second last item that we're going to work on this page. So let's get started. So now we'll continue from where we left off the last time. All right, so before we can even try to submit answers, I wanted to touch base a little bit about model binding. You might want to look at other video tutorials that I'm planning to create on explaining how models were binded by MVC model binders. But in short, right now, if you go to the page that was created by this tool, right, and if you go and inspect the elements, you see that this is a plain input type radio. Okay, so now if you look at it, I have a model here. The model is nothing but a question model. So if I wanted to do a strongly typed model, or if I wanted to bind it back to a class that I just created, answer model, the HTML page that will be rendered if I use the model would be something like this. Let me show you. For integer I equal to 0, I is less than model dot question dot, I'm sorry, what do I do here? Options, okay, I plus plus. Then let's just say I am model dot options dot count. All right, HTML dot radio button for X such that I have some problem again. Okay, I guess everyone's familiar with this logic, right? Radio buttons for. What's the default value? I'll just put no. Okay, so let's see what is the sample output for this. Values cannot be null parameter. Value cannot be null, so possibly one of these two. Okay. Question number. Let's try a different question number. It's the same for all, so it's gonna be something here. Let's say checked. Okay. All right, so the reason for doing this is I wanted to show this. If you notice, the HTML element that was generated by a strongly typed model binder is in the form of options, which is the property name underscore the index name underscore, and it generates something like this, options, with an array of 0. Right, so this is exactly what a model binder will look into the HTML element when it tries to bind the value back on the post. But if you look at this, you see that the answer model that we have is slightly different from what we have in the question model. The question model has the name is different. We also have the name of the choices as QXO model, question maps options model. Right, so none of the names, none of the class names are the same, because here we have answer model and choice model. So for the same reason, if we wanted to replicate the same data, something like this, we have to custom code it, or we have to create an HTML prefix, or we have to create our own custom helper classes, and that I think is beyond the scope of this tutorial. I'll not go to that. So what can I do here now? I'll have to make sure that the name is able to bind back to the model that I have. That is my target, my answer model, which should be in the form of a choice model. So what do I do? What is the property name? It's user choices. So what we get to do here now is we have to put name equals user choices of I. All right, and we know that this is going to bind to the value is checked of the answer model that we have. Is checked. It's a user choice property, and it's going to bind to the is checked. Now we also have one which is choice ID. So what we'll have to put here, we don't want this to be seen, so we'll just put type equal to hidden. All right, and the name equal to the same way, user choices of I dot choice ID. And what is the value that I wanted to put? I wanted to put item dot choice ID. All right, let's see what's the outcome of this. Let's refresh. I does not. Oh, I'm sorry again. I made a blunder. So this is what we need to use now. We have to use the for loop because we are not going to be able to use the for each anymore. Okay, sounds about right. So your model dot options dot I, and we're gonna have to use here as well. Yeah, that's it. It's correct. A parse error. Please save me some space here. Unexpected for keyword. Oh, that's because of this. Should not be putting an additional at because I copy pasted it. That was the reason. All right, there we go. So if you look at the inspect element here, instead of having the default, now I'm having user choices 1 of is checked, user choices 2 of is checked, user choices 3 of is checked, and user choices 4. So when I'm targeting this model as the result, I should be able to, the model binder should be able to bind it properly by user choices 1 of check ID and is checked, user choices 2 of choice ID and is checked. So that's how it's going to work, and that's exactly how it is rendered. Okay, so I think that much should be sufficient to help us understand how we wanted to generate this one. The rest of the code that I will be putting in here is all about fancy codes like the div element, the classes, and blah 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 blah. So I will not explain everything in detail. I'll just copy paste a few codes. Just hang on for some time. Okay, so coming back from where we left off, you see I have just simply added some additional scripts, which looks kind of huge, but really there's nothing. In the same script that we have question, I just added some div row and div column. The question type, instead of the if statement, I use a switch, right, for a radio. This is just a text that says choose the correct answer, and the other one is exactly the same, which is for each option. The same thing that we discussed in the tutorials just a while ago, putting a hidden field for the choice ID, putting a is check mapping to radio button, and then this is displaying the label. All right, so it's really nothing, and this one is an addition just to make sure that the model binder does not throw an error saying, hey, I missed some property. So I'm just adding a hidden value, which really doesn't serve any purpose for this anyway. And I have added this item that we have, instead of on a plain text with a line breaks, I have added them as list item with an UL. And this class again is basically used only for some purposes that by looking at the code you will understand few things which I may not want to be able to go through at this time, but it's a very simple JavaScript that is tied to this one. Okay, so the same goes for multiple. It's the same thing. There's no difference at all, except that the type here is checkbox. As for this one, it's radio. And if the answer type is text, what do? We just display Again, we still have choice ID because we do not want the model binder to forget the options ID. So we still want to give the answers ID, and the answer will be stored in a text area instead of radio buttons. So that's basically the only changes that I have done. It looks huge, but that's it. Now we will go back to submitting the answers. Here we go. If you look at the page, I already have, oh, it expires. Okay, so I choose this, and when I hit save, I would expect that it would go to somewhere, and that somewhere is the action method, which I will call it as post action. Let's create that. I just wanted to copy this section because I wanted to do this for verification as well. So I will copy up to this one. Okay, now public action result post answer. We'll accept an answer model, the one that we have already created, and then I will make sure that I pass this before it's overridden by the clipboard. Just a simple validation of the same thing that we did earlier. Okay, and the choices will have the token. All right, and we'll declare this as HTTP post. We're good so far. And just to avoid the compile error, we'll just put a placeholder here as return view. Now to save the answer, I wanted to do one validation, that is to get the question ID, because, all right, let me just open this for a bit. The design, the relationship between the data, the test X question ID is the test mapping of the test. The question is stored here, and this ID is required by the test paper. So when you save the answers, it asks you what is the ID of this question. All right, instead of asking you the test ID and the question ID, it asks you this ID. That is what we wanted to store here. We also wanted to store the choice ID, which is this one. This is something that we will get from the customer based on the choice selected by the user. The last thing is the answers and the questions. All we will get it from the combination of all of this information. So let's go. I don't want to save anything. So let's say variable test question info is equal from the context of test x questions dot where x dot test ID will be equal to the registration dot test ID, and x dot the question number equal to choices dot question ID. Okay, select set step new. So I'm just trying to get some information for now. Let's say the test question, I want to use all of this information later on, so I'll just get all this equal to the x.id, that is the test question ID, and then the question type is equal to x.question type. Then we have the actual question ID, which is equal to x.id, and then we have a point that is associated with this one. I'll typecast it to decimal because I wanted to divide this one with some numbers, so it's an integer, right, in the database, so I wanted to typecast it to decimal. Question.points. I'll say first or default. Now I have my test question information ready. So what do I do next? I will check if test flow is not equals null, right? I will have to go just making sure that the question that I'm getting is correct. I'll do if choices, that is what the user has input from the model above here, choices dot user choices dot count is greater than 1. So why am I doing this? Why am I checking is greater than 1? The reason is let's say choices, is because if it is an objective type question like this, a multiple choice question, there is definitely going to be at least more than one, right? So but if the user chooses a radio button, again, as far as a model binder goes, the number of answers will still be more than one. But if the type of question is a text box, there's only one item here in the list, so it will be always one, no more than one. So that is just an indication to identify whether the question type or the number of answers, if it is more than one, then we are sure that it is going to be either this or this, and if it is just one, we're sure that it is a text. So that's one way of identifying the thing. Otherwise, we can also use the test question info dot question type, right? But we just did a different angle. So what we do, we'll declare a variable here, variable, strange. Okay, let's do it. So what are we to get here? We are trying to get all the points. What we're trying to do is we're trying to relate everything. The question, we're trying to relate the question here. The question has got the parent points. The choices also have their points. We're trying to mate them with the test, and we're trying to calculate whether they are correct or wrong. After that, we're going to put them into this table. So that's what we're going to do. Let's get back. So here what we'll do is from a in context.choices. But where is that? Start is active. We're only going to take the active one. This is writing a link query. Join B in. This is what the user has submitted. User selected ID on a.id. B. Okay, so I'll come back to this point later on. I'm going to just simply select new a.id points equal to, even here I wanted to make sure that I want to typecast it to decimal because a.points is an integer. As enumerable, I did this first because the mathematical calculation that I wanted to do later on will not be recognized by entity framework, so I wanted to retrieve a enumerable first before I wanted to do my own C# code logic. So I'll do under select, so it's that new testx paper over this, and just to save it I'll put to list. What do I want it to do to initialize the value of the testx is registration ID, which is going to be registration.id, and then the testx question ID equal to test question info dot the question ID, right? And then the choice ID x.id, that is the answer ID. And what's the answer? We know that if we are into this position, we know that it is either a radio button, so it's definitely always checked. And then the mark scored is, all right, so what is it? Test question info the point divided by 100. So how is the percentage calculated? 30% out of, all right, I think I have to do it this way. So 30% out of 50. What's the mathematical formula for this? We have to put in 50 divided by 100 multiplied by 30. This is the formula that we will apply here. So test info.point is the points carried by the question. 100 is the mathematical formula. And let's make sure that this is 0, 0, so that it takes a decimal value of it. And let's enclose it with bracket just to make sure that these things are divided before they get multiplied. And then multiply by x.points. This x.points is the percentage, the weightage of the answer. Now, why are we getting an exception? we're getting an exception because it represents a bool precision floating point number. So in order to get this to work, we have to make sure that we represent this one to m, so that the typecasting in decimal is matched. Okay, now this answer has got a potential to return a very lengthy decimal number, so I wanted to make sure I only get a floating or a fixed integer. So let's say math.floor it down to the closest possible. So we're doing good, so I already created it. Now I wanted to come back to this result. What I do here now is I get the list of all the answers that are associated with this particular question. Okay, this particular question that is at hand. Now, how do I get that? User selected ID. Now let's go back to this one. Am I trying to get some problem here? My system is okay. All right, so just like I explained earlier, if you come to this one, regardless whether the user has put a check mark here or not, every one of them is part of the index. So index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when the form is submitted to the server, you will get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items in the user choices. Now, not necessarily that these items are checked by the user, maybe only 4, maybe 2. So this user selected ID is intentionally made so that the model itself lies the business wherein it does filtering. It automatically filters out whichever was unchecked, and it will return the IDs of these answers, only the ones which are checked. So we are 100% guaranteed that when we join this property with the choices, we only get the IDs which are selected by the user. That indicates that we really do not need to even go to the level of checking any other question ID or any other verification, no nothing, because the answer ID is final. So with that, we get the answer and we mapped it to the question related to it, and that's how we're able to get the points. I think this is good. So now after that, this is only if they are of type checkboxes or radio buttons. Now else, it is assumed that the answer is of type text. So what do we do in case of a text answer? We'll do context.testxpapers.add new testxpaper. Okay, and let's populate the data as well. Registration ID equal to ID choices.user choices.first or default. Anyway, you know that there will always be only one, because if you look at the page for type text, there is no for loop here. You are 100% guaranteed again that there will always be only one. That's the reason for using first or default, the choice ID. So this is something that has to be built later on. So anything of type text or descriptive answers, there is no way that a computer can identify whether the answer is really true or correct or deserves a 50 point or deserves a 90 point. So I'm always hard coding it to 1. That has to be manually analyzed later on. And then what's the answer? The answer is whatever the user has put in the answer text box, answer. So with this, we are just done with saving the answers of the user. I'm building it. Okay, so let's find out. All right, so if I choose this, okay, so everything's working fine, but there is no clear indication whether to see if my answers are saved or not, because whenever I go back, the answer gets reset. This is something that I have to work on. Now, I wouldn't want to go to the database and check because I know it gets saved, the code works, but what I wanted to do rather is I wanted to create a user interface itself. On this UI itself, I wanted to go back to the question and see what are the saved answer. So this has to be done when we request for the question itself, right? So let's go back to a few steps that we have worked on earlier. This is the registration, this is the evaluation page. So in the evaluation, we were checking all those things: entities, registration, is it valid or not, the question, the test answer, and if the test questions IDs are valid. So we have already worked on all of those. Now what we have to do is we have to ensure that if there is already an answer associated with this one, we have to add it to them. So after we have the question ID and the model for the question model, we have to set it here. Let's say now if it is already answered earlier, set the choice of the user. Okay, so what I will do is variable saved answers. I'll try to recollect here: context dot testxpapers dot where says that x dot testx question ID is equal to test question ID. Then x dot registration ID equal to registration dot ID, and x dot choice dot is active equal to true. Now I'm just trying to bring the list of question ID. If I do not use this, there may be a lot of answers associated to this question, right? Because there will be so many people giving the test, and the same question ID will be used over and over and over again. But for this person, there will be only one entry. If I do not add this filter, then it will get results for even other students as well. So I'm explicitly making that option here, and then I will select x dot new x dot choice ID x dot the answer that was selected dot to list. Okay, now I'm able to get from the paper what was already saved for this particular question that I'm retrieving. Okay, the next thing is I have to assign these answers. So for it, variable saved answer in save answers, what I wanted to do is the model that I'm going to pass to the user on the options, where x such that x dot choice ID equal to saved answer dot choice ID first or default. Okay, so definitely if it is already saved, this answer must already be on the options because we've already populated it here, but we still do not know what is the value or the amount or whatever is saved in this one. So what we have to put is dot answer is equal to save dot answer. So what happens here is one single equals. So if you go back to the page, we know that whenever a checkbox or a radio button is checked, we have the answer, the word checked, and this word checked is going to be assigned to the answer field of these options. I'm building this. Let's find out. Okay, so I'm refreshing this because the session expired again because we built it. Okay, put anything, put anything, put anything, continue. Okay, register and start. Okay, so what am I expecting to get now? It's fingers crossed. I'll put a check mark on this too and click on save and next. I really don't know if they are saved because, well, this is the next thing that we have to work on. It does not move next. So we go to 2 and I choose this and I hit save and next again. I'm expecting that it would save. Go to 3. Now let's see. Oops. We got it all wrong. So something somewhere is not getting saved. Let's find out why. Are we getting any error when you try to save it? Tick, tick. Okay, so yes, we are missing some values here. We have got a JavaScript error because this is an indicator that we're trying to use that I've missed. When you click on next or when you click on backward, we have to put some value to indicate to the server whether you want it to go forward or backward, and that is missing, and that's why the data never gets submitted to the server. So let's do that. What we have to do, when we post it, when you hit next and save, this is the model that has to be submitted. If you check what are the fields, you see that you request a test ID, you request a question ID, you request a token, the user choices, which of course were already there now, the answer already there, the direction is the one that is throwing the error. So let's go and put that in. Let's go to the top, and then let's put all of this inside a form element. This one, say using HTML begin form post answer. Well, we really didn't do this either, isn't it? We've forgotten it completely. Form method dot post new. I'm just going to assign an ID to this one. Form. Okay. Alright, so we have the HTML form that will get generated. Now the next thing I wanted to do is I wanted to create a few hidden values that I wanted to pass over whenever it gets submitted. So it will be input type hidden. The name is just like what I told you, direction. Okay. The value is forward. I think you're getting the point here now. So the token is what will come from the session data. So session of token, right? So this is the reason why we always get failed. And then we have test ID. The test ID is coming from the model.testID. And we also have another hidden field, which is the question ID, which is going to come from the model.question number. Well, there's a little mix of understanding here. We name it question ID, but we're putting the question number. But that's exactly what we have already understood in the server earlier, that we are using the question ID for question number correctly. All right. So this being said, let's again find out if we still have missed something. So what happens is, these are hidden fields. If you go down to the text, next, if you go save forward, all right, I think we still need to write this JavaScript as well. So the button is a simple button, JavaScript class, on click save forward. So this is where we have to go and add the method name. So what do we want it to do? It's JavaScript. So let's put it here somewhere. Script. Let's say function is save forward. If you notice, save forward sends this. So we're accepting one, which is the sender. What do? We have the hidden field, which is direction, and we will make sure that the value is forward because we are going to save forward. And then document dot get element by ID. You know the name, the ID of the form is form serialize. Okay. No, I'm sorry, we're not going to go to Ajax, so we will just simply directly submit the value. I think we're good on this. And then what we will do is we'll copy the same thing because I know we will have it for the backward. So for the back button, save backward. Okay. So we will have save backward, backward. and it's submitted. All right, so I think all the changes that is required for this form is done, and I think you all follow through. Let's find out. Nice. So the view post master not found. Okay, I think we still missed something in the response type. So all right, there's the reason. We should not be returning this. In fact, there is no page like post answer. Whenever we're done doing this, all we have to do is we have to return the eval page, which is return redirect to action eval page. Okay, and what are the tokens that we wanted to pass? We wanted to pass at least the token equal to session of token, and then question number will be. Okay, so here's the thing, we still need to write one more to identify what's the question ID we're passing on, because whenever they hit post, you know that they will come from by hitting the either save and next or save and backward, right? So what we have to do here is we have to determine what is the page number that we're going to give them next. How do we do that? Let's do it. So this is the page, post answer. After we're done everything, let's prepare what is the question that we want to call. So get the next question depending on the direction. Okay, so next question number equal to 1. I'm just hard coding it to make sure that we don't get any negative values here. Okay, if the choices of direction, that is what is the user has submitted, whether he clicked the forward or backward, forward, string comparison dot ignore cases. Okay, if it is equals this one, then what I want it to do is next question number equals, I'm going to take what is the current question, next question number from the database, test x questions dot where x, that's that, x dot test ID, which is equal to the one submitted by the user, and the question number is also which is greater than the question that is currently submitted by the user, right? And I'm going to make sure that it is sorted based on by this, because otherwise my answer will be wrong if I don't make sure it is sorted properly. And I'm going to take only the top one. Okay, x dot question number. I hope this is good. So let's find out. We're checking the question. For this test, whichever is the question number next to this one, by making sure that it is ordered by the question number. And we're taking only the first one next to this, next to the current question. So if there is a number, it will return a value. If there is none, it will return null. All right, that's understood. Otherwise, if it is a backward direction, we will do the same code, and then this sorting we have to do it by descending. We still take the first one. Finally, what we have to do is we have to check if the next question that I get is equal to null, or the next question that I get is less than 1. All I have to do is again make sure that it is always 1. And unfortunately, or fortunately, why am I getting this? That is because an integer of this type will never give a null value. So this much of validation is more than enough. So this makes sure that the next question that I get is always never an exception or never an error. It is either the next value or the previous value, or it is always 1. So this is what I should put in here. Now this is as per design. We can do it better by saying if you're in the end of the answer, then you can even say, hey, you are in the end of it. thank you for taking test or anything. So you can do the validation here if in case you wanted to, and depending on this condition you can change the redirection value to end of test or something. But in this design, what I wanted to do is I wanted to keep on looping it. All right, so if you keep on hitting next and you're in the end of it, it will still keep coming back to 1. So that's the design. Not a very good design, but that's how I wanted to do it. So we're doing it. Okay, it's built, so we have to refresh again. Now let's find out if it works. Save. So you see it has automatically moved to point number 2. I'll choose 1 here. Next. Wow, this is working, guys. This is working. I'm so happy. So what about if I click on this one and save back? Whoa, this is the problem. Anyway, I'm less bothered about this because we can change that. That's not so difficult anyway. All right, so if I go back to 1, it still doesn't save it. All right, I'm not happy about this. I'm really not happy about this now. So we can check where is the problem. Taking it. If the question is this, it's checked. Oh, I have not saved it anywhere. Look at it. It's like, you know, a golden bulb showing in the air, and I am plucking the golden bulb. I have not saved it anywhere, so I have to save it. If test question is greater than 1, go here, context.save changes. Let's see if we have any other problem. Oh, my bad. Someone looking at me must be laughing at me. All right, I think this is the problem. So context dot. In the test papers, I have to add this, isn't it? All values of choices, and this is the reason. So after finding the list of test papers that I have to add, I have to make sure I insert them into the database, and then I save it. So let's find out. Okay, going back, let's click here, and then let's find out. So this time, if I go and choose anything, save, and save, go back, there we go. So it is getting saved. So that's great. And with that, we have come to the end of this video. The only thing I see pending here is just like in the sample web page, we have a JavaScript timer, and we will try to work on this in our next video. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you there again. Bye bye.